How's it going, everybody? This is Jeff Mann with Team Reeling the Blues. Well, you can see we finally got this boat project started. I've got a lot of the floor ripped out. Finally got this rotten plywood out of here. What's bad is the plywood on this floor was actually pretty solid. It was just totally waterlogged. I'm sure it didn't have a whole lot of life left in it. This is a mid-90s boat, but it was hard to get out here. I had to end up cutting it up in pieces. They put the floor down with regular screws, which is the only thing I've seen about this tracker that I didn't like. Everything else is done real good. Everything's nice and solid, but they used regular screws to put the plywood down. Those things rusted. You couldn't get them out, so I had to cut everything in pieces and pretty much take it out like I was putting down or taking out tile. Anyway, what this video is about, the question keeps coming up literally every other day on Facebook. Should I take the styrofoam out? Should I leave the styrofoam in? Should I put flotation in the boat? Well, flotation's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with having flotation in the boat. This old poured or sprayed styrofoam, it works, but the problem is if it ever starts to fail, and that's the problem, if it ever starts to fail, you can't stop it. Once it starts failing, you can't stop it. It soaks up water. You've had that issue with some of your skivs. About every boat manufacturer, no boat manufacturer can say they've got away from the problem 100%. All it takes is just one blemish in this styrofoam. And what happened, just give you a picture in your mind of what happens with this stuff here. This is a closed cell. Closed cell means it actually forms a bubble, and the resin, when it forms that bubble, it doesn't have any penetrations in it, so it's actually like a bunch of little balloons inside here, and they bond together. There's nowhere for water to get in. Water just lays on the skin of those balloons. Well, the problem is, if you ever get the smallest imperfection in it, I mean vibration from the bottom, when it's rattling around inside, if it happens to get a hard ding and it knocks a dent in it, even if you knock a dent in it, you're crushing those bubbles. Once you crush those bubbles, water can get in them. It's not that big a deal. It's a big chunk of styrofoam, a little bit of water gets in, no big deal. But here's the problem. If you get a pinhole, water gets in that pinhole. It lays in there. Sometimes it'll get in between all those bubbles and it'll start working its way down in there. Still no big deal. You don't have a lot of styrofoam. I mean, you don't have a lot of water in styrofoam. But the problem comes in, say it comes wintertime. You got a little water down inside that bubble. What happens, that water it freezes, it expands. When it expands, this stuff don't expand with it. It just starts crushing it. And when it crushes it, once the water starts to thaw back out, now your void that was this small, now it's this big. Now more water gets in that void. Freezes again. Now it's this big. And a lot of times it may not actually make the hole bigger, but that water, as it's expanding, it's working its way through that styrofoam as it's expanding. It's going to go somewhere. So what happens, it just keeps working its way inside the polymers of this bubble or inside your styrofoam. It starts spreading all those cells out, starts working its way in, thaws out, now water gets in a little bit more. And you can see what I'm saying. This cycle keeps going on and on and on and on. Me personally, I like to pull all this out, and I'm going to go back with sheet styrofoam. It's the I use 2-inch thick closed cell styrofoam in sheets. You can get it at some of your big box stores. Don't use the white. If you see it and it's got these beads, do not use it, because what happens is it will eventually break down. Water will get in between all those beads just like this. When it does, it will actually do the same thing to start breaking it down. But the bad problem about that stuff is once it starts breaking it down, the beads wind up back here in your bilge pump, clogs your bilge pump up. Well, so I'm going to use styrofoam, sheet styrofoam, 2-inch thick. Let me show you what we got here, and you'll see the other problem with this stuff. See, here's the problem. You see all these things right here. It's already broke loose. That's gonna make it nice when I go to pull this out. But here's the bad problem with that. That's broke loose because water has got in between these two layers, in between the hull and here, expanded, and it's popped that styrofoam loose. The problem with that, the scary part about that is, when it pops that styrofoam loose, the water gets underneath it and just lays there and lays there and lays there. The longer it lays there, it can never dry out. Styrofoam's holding the moisture in, the styrofoam's full of moisture, it can never get out, and that's what corrodes a lot of these aluminum boats on the inside out. There's no air travel underneath this, so it never dries out. And if it never dries out, you know what happens over a period of time? It starts eating away that aluminum underneath there and starts pitting it. When I go back with it, I'll go back with the sheet styrofoam, and when I cut it, I'll cut it to match these ribs, and I'll stand on its edge, and I will literally just stack that stuff in there, but I will leave it about 1 inch. I'll put a piece here and there to kind of space it up. I'll try to mount it, and I'll secure it to where it's actually got a little air travel underneath it. That way, any water that does get under it can get right back out. But you can see, this piece right here, that concerns me. Let's see if we can pop it around. There you go. Perfect example. See these voids? So what happens? Water gets inside these voids, and you see, they ain't big voids, but once water starts getting inside those, expansion and contraction, this stuff will start soaking it up. This piece right here probably weighs over 10 pounds. That's styrofoam. I promise you, there's a lot of extra weight right there. Luckily, looking at the hull, it's nasty, it's dirty. I don't really see any pitting, so I think we're in good shape. I'm gonna take and get a knife and we'll cut this and see what we got. There you go. Perfect example of what I was talking about. Looking at it from the top, it's dirty, it's nasty. If you grab it, you say, oh man, that stuff's dry as a bone. That's dry. Now look at this right here. That's all, that dark is pure water. All right, here's another example. You can see this piece right here, it don't look bad at all. I mean, that's just sawdust. This ain't discolored at all. So what happened? A person will take this right here, they'll say, man, that's dry as a bone. I'm not gonna take this styrofoam out. It's dry. I mean, you see it. It's cracking. That's light as a feather. All right, let's see what we got here actually. You see it's broke loose, so if it's broke loose, it's got water underneath it. There we go. And look, this is way worse than the other one. But look at all these voids here. Let's go ahead and cut it, see what we got. Oh yeah, it's way worse. And from the surface, you'll think this is dry as a bone. Look at that. That water's all the way up to right there. Look at the water squeezing out of that. Listen to this. Up here at the very top, that's not bad. Now, all right, let's cut off a piece of it right here. I'm only going to cut it up that far. That's about where the water seems to be in there. I'm going to cut it just like this. Guess I could get a knife. Oh, cut it straight. All right. There we go. If you see right here, dry. Dry as a bone. Dry. Nothing. Now watch this. I'm going to take just half of this. I'm going to take just this piece right here. All right, you ready? I mean, just that little piece right there. That's why we get rid of this styrofoam. Okay, after I got all this tore out of there, curiosity got to me and I just had to know. So what I have here is a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of styrofoam. This was out of about the mid-body of the boat. 12 inches by 12 inches. It's 3 inches thick. If this was just styrofoam with no water in it, it probably wouldn't even weigh half a pound. It probably wouldn't even weigh 4 or 5 ounces. Let's see what this thing weighs. So here we go. That 12 by 12 by 3 inches thick weighs 10 pounds. So what that's telling me is this is all water. There's nothing in here but water. Now here, like I say, this is in the mid body. Take that off. You can see it's all water. That piece is completely filled with water. I don't want to squeeze this out in my shop, so here, let me grab the can. So here's just a small piece of it. If I was to put this in a vise, I should have done that. I should have seen just how much water I could get out of this styrofoam. That's just those two little pieces. Now just imagine if that was salt water. If you used this boat in salt water. If this was salt water, it would have already eat halfway through that aluminum skin. That's another reason I'll get rid of it every time I find a boat that's got it in it, if it's my boat. Man, that's just crazy. Like I said, when you look at it from the top, this styrofoam looks fine. But boy, when you look at it from the bottom, there ain't nothing fine about this styrofoam. I guarantee when I get all this styrofoam out of this boat and all this rotted wood out of this boat, I'm going to reduce the weight of this boat by at least, I'd have to say at least 400 pounds. I don't see how it's not going to be at least 400 pounds. That plywood sheet that I took out of here probably weighed over 100, 150 pounds. I got all the pieces stacked up over there. I may just weigh them, and I'll weigh all this styrofoam just to see what it weighs. If you want to see how this boat build keeps going, here in a couple weeks I'm going to start putting the videos on of me doing all this work, but I just want to get this video out here because a lot of people were talking about styrofoam. But if you ain't a subscriber, please subscribe and ring that bell. If you ring that bell when I pop up another video, you'll get notified. As always, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. I'll answer them as quickly as I can, I promise. Thank you.